The most primary damage, extreme damage, is in the fourth dimension, where the lower astral and the underworld energies exist. And again, in the higher astral, there are many beautiful planes that would look very gorgeous to us in this dimension, but as well the same exists as something that would be like hellish looking kind of creations, you know, underworld, very dark, very disturbing kind of, you know, creations. So the astral plane has been primarily controlled by a consciousness that is not human. And these beings were a part of the original gatekeepers of dimension. So this would, again, to step back for a moment, is to understand that we share space with many, many, many different levels of extraterrestrials, of beings that are both in form and not in form. They happen to have a lot of control over the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension, primarily the fourth dimension, because that access to that dimension happens to be connected to our planetary stargate, which is in Egypt. So Giza, Egypt, the pyramids, this area is actually an access into the astral or the fourth dimension. And as we know, there's been a lot of war, a lot of strife, a lot of human suffering in this area of the Middle East of planet Earth, and that's not an accident. When human beings are suffering or they're killed in blood sacrifice, such through war or through quote-unquote wars over God, these beings are then used as bindings of particular levels of suffering that keep this level of consciousness in control of that dimension. So this is why, you know, nothing is random. When you see these types of things going on, these are power spots on the planet. Yep. So this access to the fourth dimension is literally understanding that that connects to our heart chakra, right? So when we start to open our heart chakra, we actually start connecting into that dimension, and on the planet, it then connects to the opening of that dimension, which of course is Giza, Egypt. This is why this was such a powerful spot on our planet, and they've basically attempted to take that away from the human race, of which at the last 5,000 years they've been successful. So according to the Guardians, about 5,000 years ago, and they use this term, and I want to say this before I use this term, is to understand that we are all part and parcel of God. There is nothing to fear, and there is nothing more powerful than your right relationship to your higher power, and that is up to you personally. As you connect to your own being, as you connect to your own higher power, there is nothing more powerful than this. So with that being said, I want to as well continue to understand that we have had an invasion on our planet. And this invasion has happened through levels of consciousness we could say are anti-human. If we look at the structures on our planet here today, as you mentioned earlier, they're not structures that support or cultivate humanity's potential. Structures that are put in place to enslave humanity's potential. This is what has happened to our planet, and we're at the end of a cycle now where we can choose to experience something much different than what we have experienced specifically in the last 5,000 years, but we're ending a 26,000-year cycle at this time, and this is why our opportunity is so great at this time, and also why we have so much extraterrestrial activity, and as we were speaking of our indigo and our crystal kids, that's why the influx of all of the beings coming here at this time. So the astral plane was the primary plane of what I call the recycling or the enslavement. What was happening on the astral plane was something that the Guardians refer to as the false white light or the false Christ consciousness matrix. Now what this was designed to do was that for those of us that had some psychic ability, had a couple of our receivers still plugged in, right? Because we have the phenomena of psychics. We have beings that have developed psychic, sensory abilities, but this does not mean they're spiritually evolved or enlightened. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our material that's channeled is actually coming from beings that are really not who they say they are. So when we connect and we don't understand the nature of our multidimensional universe and the cosmology of the dimensions and the frequency bands, because we are not trained to understand that and we're not given that information, which has been purposely withheld from the human race so that we don't understand what's going on, is that this information has been feeding us false information in many cases. Most of this information was being broadcast and controlled from the astral plane, which was like a recycling center. So from the Guardian perspective, what has happened to this planet, specifically over this last 26,000 year cycle, and it's been going on actually for a couple 100,000 years according to them and their timeline, is that beings have gotten stuck down here, meaning in this quadrant of the universe, in this particular planet, there's been a recycling of souls going on. And over a period of time, when a soul makes a choice repeatedly to live in destructive patterns, and to define destructive, it would be like saying that which is in harmony with the true nature of the soul and that which is not in harmony with the true nature of the soul. So discordant choices, destructive choices. Because again, there's nothing wrong with polarity and having the experience of the polarity, meaning the extremes of experiences that humans have sought out as a part of experiencing consciousness. But what happened over time is that there was a manipulation going on. And beings were actually not given the proper information. It's like saying, when we were invaded 5,000 years ago, our memory was erased. And what that means is that, again, here we come back to the neurological part of the global brain of our planet and the global brain of our species, because we're connected to the planet, and it impacts our brain and our processing. So when the planet was invaded, they went into basically what you would say the aura, the consciousness fields. Everything has a template, has what's known as a core manifestation body. So the planet has one of these as well. So when they came and they invaded the planet, one of the primary areas they invaded was the astral plane, which was the fourth dimension, which is again that Sumerian, Iraq, Giza area in the Middle East. And when they came in at that particular time, they created a lot of damage in the planetary brain, which is again called the logos of our planet. When they did this, a lot of our consciousness and our memory, meaning who we are, what we're doing on the planet, our purpose, our connection to God, all of that got erased. So what was happening is beings were literally having a 3D physical experience, dropping their body, being told to go into the white light, which was an umbilicus structure connected to our aura. You'd go into the astral plane and they'd sit you down and say, well, you know, you didn't do too well. You need to, you know, work out this with that one. You probably need to get back in there again. And they sent you back. You basically were being recycled between the 3D physical plane and the fourth dimensional plane. So when I had this realization, it was quite boggling at the time, because what then takes us to the next level of thought is, wow, these enslavement structures are not just on the physical 3D Earth. They're literally existing in another dimension that's closest in octave to our physical Earth. But again, the fourth dimension is the next octave. So again, the next octave is being controlled. And so this is a part of understanding an elaborate architecture was placed there to suppress human souls from evolving and remembering their true birthright, which is they are God, they are sovereign, they are free beings with free will choice, and that was interfered with, essentially. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
That's so long. We could talk hours.
Actually, I don't find it disturbing or fearful. I find it, I mean, I've been saying for years that the world's going to look like it's just getting worse and worse and worse. But what's really happening is that light is being shone in all the dark places, and that truth is being revealed.
Exactly.
Not that these things are new or just starting to happen, they've always been going on. So I just find that it's another truth being revealed, and you know, once you can name something, you take the power out of it.
Exactly.
So when we know these things and we and they feel true to us, we can release the fear of the control. We can release the fear that we are insignificant in compared to.
Exactly.
When you think of the lengths that they have had to go to, you know, poisoning food, poisoning water, poisoning electromagnetic environment, poisoning the air that we breathe, the indoctrination from such a young age through the education system. They've got to go to a great extent in order to suppress us, which all that tells you really is just how powerful we really are, that they have to go to such lengths. And we're still waking up in spite of it. We're still seeing through it. We're still moving forward and growing and evolving in spite of all of it. So I find it very uplifting, actually.
I do too, but when I do also have an awareness that what we're speaking about is still on the fringe, even in the New Age communities. You know, being people that have had access to this material have not had access to quite this level of the material. So I still, you know, tread a little slowly, and again, I think it's very important. I am definitely a proponent of understanding and facing the shadow and the darkness, because if we do not look at what has happened to our planet and how we have gotten here, if we look at the planet today, what happened? How did we get here? Who's benefiting from this? I mean, basically, that's the most logical thing you can do if you don't even feel resonance to this information, is to really ask yourself, who is benefiting from what's going on this planet? Because